Good afternoon. My name is Basil Touchon, and I will be serving as moderator for this forum for candidates for the State Representative, District 93. The League of Women Voters of Lexington and Civic Lex are sponsors for this event. This forum will be available later by going to the League website, www.lwvlexington.com. We have two candidates with us today for this election. They are Adrielle Camuel and Sarah Ritter. We're following the nonpartisan League of Women Voters policies and procedures for this forum. In order to give the candidates a fair chance to be heard, we have randomly drawn via random.org for the order of opening remarks and questions, and then a second time for the order of closing remarks. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to introduce themselves and 60 seconds to respond to questions. Questions have been created by the sponsors and from the public. Finally, we will give each candidate 60 seconds for closing remarks, and we will use a second drawing for the order of closing remarks. First, we'll begin with opening remarks, and the candidates will go according to the order of the drawing. We will first hear from Ms. Camuel. You have 60 seconds.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you all working around the schedules and making sure that this forum happened. But my name is Adrielle Camuel, and I am the state rep for House District 93 in the south side of Fayette County. I won the special election in November of 23 and proudly served in my first session. We just finished the budget session, but I've got 2 degrees in political science. My undergraduate and graduate degrees are both political science from the University of Louisville. I've worked for Fayette County Public Schools as an administrative assistant and working with the families of about 21,000 students in our elementary schools for I'm finishing up my 14th year. Some people get confused and they think that I am a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I'm married to a teacher, but really enjoyed my first session. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
Good evening. First and foremost, my biggest thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I am a lifelong Lexingtonian, and I have spent the entirety of my career so far working in public service. From day one, I worked in the legislature and then moved on to work in Governor Beshear's Office of Legislative Affairs back in 2022. And I'm also an active young Democrat. I work to revitalize the current chapter here into what it is today. I've held leadership roles across Fayette County and in the statewide Kentucky Young Democrats. And I'm ready to bring my experience to be the reliable and dependable leadership that we need in Frankfort going forward. So thank you again for having me here tonight.
Thank you all. Moving to the questions, we'll start with our first question with you, Mr. Ritter. What is the most critical issue facing your district, and how do you plan to address it?
Thank you for the question. I believe that the biggest issue that we are facing right now in the 93rd District relates to economic prosperity as we are moving forward past the pandemic. We are in a tale of 2 Kentuckys right now. Lexington and Louisville have really recovered a lot faster than the rest of the state has. And we need to make sure that we are bringing people to the legislature that are willing and able to make the changes that we need to see that are going to move us further into this time past the pandemic. And able to do that, we need to make sure that we have policies that will provide for that. So in doing so, we can make sure that the people are not just living from paycheck to paycheck, but can actually lay down roots here for a generation.
Thank you. Ms. Camuel?
Thank you for the question. I From my experience, I've been canvassing in this district for the last 7 years, since 2017. And when I'm knocking at the doors, one of the main issues that always comes up is housing. Housing prices for rent, extremely high in Lexington, but 53% of the housing units in the 93rd are rentals. And so the cost of rent has really gotten high, so there are economic challenges that come with that. And so one of the things that we need to focus on is, I believe, bringing down housing prices. I did propose a bill this session that would address that. One of the biggest challenges we face is the passage of the bill that allow the legislature to discriminate based on sources of income. So that is a big issue here in the 93rd.
For our next few questions, we'll talk about the legislative session that just wrapped up. Which one particular newly passed law from the last legislative session resonates with you the most, and why? Ms. Camuel, you get to go first now.
Okay, so the session that we just finished, the one that resonates with me the most, I think, is the one that will have the most positive impact on women and infants in Kentucky, and that was the passage of SB 74. We were able to pass that. Actually, we also were able to get added to that the Momnibus bill, which was House Bill 10. Both of these bills do multiple things that will help women. It makes pregnancy a qualifying event for insurance purposes. It expands in the HANDS program, as well as provides additional opportunities for maternal and infant health. Things that a lot of people don't know, in Kentucky, we have 72 counties that don't have an OBGYN. We've got at least 57 counties without a pediatrician, or in about 92 counties are low on primary care providers. So this bill will actually enhance that and allow people to receive care they need.
Thank you. Ms. Ritter?
I also think that the Momnibus bill is an incredible bill that was passed this past legislative session. And I think it's for a different reason why I think that it was a very powerful bill. And that's because people in the legislature were able to work across the aisle. We're in a place right now where we are working against a supermajority. And the ability of Democrats to work across the aisle has been extremely powerful. And when I'm state legislator, I will also be doing that and making these incremental changes that will actually have benefits to people in their daily lives. We don't often see from just our everyday lives how our legislature affects us, but when we're able to have these changes made across the aisle, we can actually make some good change.
Thank you. Is there a bill that failed to pass in the last session that you strongly supported? In your view, why did it not pass, and how would you approach it differently? Ms. Ritter, you can start.
I think any bill that is surrounding expanding abortion access that failed in this past legislative session should have been passed. We are facing a healthcare crisis here in Kentucky as women, and bills that were supported regarding expanded access to abortion, especially when it comes to rape and incest, and when the life of a mother is involved, we should be supporting, especially Hadley's law supported by, Senator David Yates. That should have been able to get a committee hearing, and it's an abysmal tragedy that it did not.
Thank you. Ms. Camuel?
Hi, yes. Again, I think that's a really good question. And I agree with Ms. Ritter on much of what she said, but a bill that I really wanted to see move forward was Senator Westerfield's car bill. I think that was a huge missed opportunity with common sense gun safety measures. Again, nobody wants to go in and take guns away. What we want to do is minimize the risk if somebody becomes a threat to themselves, like to provide the mental health services that is needed in times of crisis. Kentucky leads the nation or is one of the leaders in the nation for I hate to call it gun violence, but gun deaths, accidental gun deaths and unintentional incidents that occur with it. But I think that we really missed an opportunity to move Kentucky forward with that bill. It was a good bill. It was a compassionate bill and would provide a massive amount of safety in Kentucky.
Thank you. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was a hot topic in the recent session, but no major laws were enacted. What's your stance on DEI, and how would you advocate for or against such measures in the future? Ms. Camuel, you can go.
Thanks. Gosh, that's a good question and one that isn't so easy, but I am very happy to say that we were able to stop those anti-DEI bills and arguing against those on the floor. If anyone was watching, it got pretty heated. But how would I? Part of promoting that is education. It is all about making sure that people understand what DEI means. And whenever you are opposing it, the impact that it has on a huge umbrella of people. And so my goal would be to expand education and to be able to sit down and have conversations. And I was a member of 8 legislators, 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans. We would meet for lunch and we would have conversations about these issues. DEI was one of them where we realized we disagree on a lot of things, but we were able to really have good, deep conversations where we understood that we were standing together on these issues.
Thank you.
I have been actively involved with the college Democrats in the past year and listening to them talk about the issues that they're concerned about regarding DEI. And we do need to have more people involved in the legislature that are listening to the people that are actually affected by these issues. DEI is not going away, and it will likely become an issue in the next session. And so my commitment is to continue to work with our students involved in these issues and passing legislation that will protect them and make sure that they have the resources that they need to not just get through college and get through these early days of their career, because I know it's very difficult, but to actually help them thrive going forward.
Thank you. Access to affordable healthcare continues to be a concern for many. What steps would you take to improve healthcare accessibility and affordability in our communities? Ms. Ritter.
I think that this is a matter of education. We need to make sure that our constituents understand what is available to them and give them the opportunity to access these steps moving forward. We are seeing, like I said earlier, an absolute epidemic of women not being able to access the things that they need to have proper reproductive health care. And especially when it comes to the children of our state, they are falling behind in a lot of different places. And working on both sides of the aisle, we need to make sure that we are adequately funding healthcare for not just the women and the children of our state, but all across the span of our communities.
Thank you. Ms. Camuel.
Accessibility it's not just a Kentucky issue, it's a national issue. But whenever we look at healthcare in Kentucky, there are steps that we need to take to make sure that we are protecting our rural hospitals and our rural providers. And we were able to do that whenever we stopped one of the bills in the healthcare committee that was dealt with certificate of need. We've had a lot of hospital closures. Lexington, Louisville, we keep expanding our hospital networks, but we're not able to provide all the resources needed out in the rural counties. I think we need to continue to work on bills that make sure that we are funding and promoting. We've done some of that in the budget, some of our rural hospitals, but also I do believe that we need to make sure that we are expanding our social safety nets. That definitely includes making sure that we are taking care of the most vulnerable in Kentucky. And we do that through government assistance programs, provide expanding Medicare, Medicaid, dental insurance, eye, hearing, speech, and so on.
Thank you. What's your stance on SB 150 and gender affirming care? And how do you plan to support or challenge this in the next legislative session? Ms. Camuel, You can go.
Thanks. SB 150 is actually one of the cruelest bills, anti-LGBTQ bills in the nation. It is one that I have absolutely been committed to overturning, repealing. I did file the co-sponsor. I was primary co-sponsor on HB 376. That was the full repeal of SB 150, but we took it a few steps further to make sure that we are making sure that in schools our kids are protected. And I plan on filing that bill again, should I win the election on the 21st. But also I filed the bill that would provide gender neutral bathrooms. And I worked with an architect in Northern Kentucky in order to do that, because our schools should be a safe place for kids to be. And then I also and I'll refile that one, as well as the bill that required part of our social studies is learning about the contributions of LGBTQ members of the community to our history in America.
Senate Bill 150 is, I think, maybe the cruelest bill that has ever been passed out of the Kentucky legislature. And every resource that we have to undo the unjust harm that has been done needs to be put forth. And that means listening to every stakeholder in this horrible situation that we've been put in, listening to not just the people that are directly affected by it, but also the parents, and making sure that we are listening to everybody involved. And I believe that truly the best that we can do right now is a full repeal, and making sure that there's education across the state about making sure that all of these different stakeholders are involved.
Thank you. What's your stance on HB 5, also known as the Tough on Crime Bill, which recently became state law? Ms. Ritter.
Thank you. HB 5 is the Kentucky Suffer Act, not the Kentucky Safer Act. And we should be putting our resources upstream, trying to prevent people from ending up in situations that could put them in a place of incarceration or being unhoused, opposed to putting more money into our very unsafe prisons right now.
Thank you. Ms. Camuel.
Yes, the Suffolk Kentucky Act is definitely a black mark for Kentuckians, to be sure. It is definitely cruel. It relies on really failed policies of the 90s. We cannot incarcerate our way out of crime. The criminalization of homelessness is unconscionable. And the Supreme Court was hearing a case on that today that was brought out of Oregon I'm curious to find out, based on the Supreme Court decision, if they rule that it violates constitutional rights, if it will actually overturn all of HB 5, because it's such a huge bill that should have been separate bills. But what we found in our debates on this on the floor is that the sponsor of the bill did not basically lifted his sources, and the bill wasn't written based on fact from those sources, but actually went opposite them. So it's a terrible bill. There may have been some good pieces in it in places, but overall, I think it's a bill that we have got to overturn.
Thank you. Considering the impact of climate change on our state, what environmental policies would you champion to ensure sustainability and protect our natural resources? Ms. Camuel.
So environmental sustainability, there are a lot of ways that we can go with this. One of the things that I would like to see is a move. We actually just passed the bill that made it harder to close down inefficient, expensive coal plants like other plants, where we have more affordable resources to provide energy. So I'd like to see us move more to wind turbines where it's feasible, as well as solar. I think that will go a long way, as well as changing some of our farming methods. There are ways that we can do more sustainable farming. I'm a big believer in using fewer pesticides. I believe that makes for a healthier environment, and also making sure that we are not allowing the coal mines that are currently operating in Kentucky to allow their runoff into our streams and waterways, because it directly impacts all of us.
Thank you. Ms. Ritter?
Thank you. I believe that this is a twofold issue and it gets back into economic policy. We need to make sure that the generation that I'm a part of and the children that I hope to have one day are going to be able to thrive in a beautiful and sustainable climate. And we do that by first protecting the workers that are in our coal fields right now, by giving them opportunities to have these roles in more sustainable energy, and also thinking about some different policies that have been enacted across the country, whether it's wind in Texas or the wind turbines in Illinois, and trying to find some different options for not just protecting our workers here, but also moving us into this next generation.
Thank you. This next question will be our last before moving to closing remarks. Some Democratic voters express feeling discouraged about voting in state-level elections, fearing their representatives will struggle to make an impact within a Republican supermajority. What message do you have for these voters, and how do you plan to implement your vision? Ms. Ritter?
Thank you. I feel extremely passionate about this because I'm going to be in this space for quite a long time. I understand the sentiment that people are discouraged by how things are moving forward in this state, but we have to make incremental change, and we do that by recruiting more candidates like myself, younger people who are willing to work tirelessly across the aisle and make sure that we have quality candidates that are going to be in this for the long haul. It is not, it feels like it's an uphill battle, but it truly is not when you have a team behind you that is willing to support this vision. And getting that message out to the everyday voter is the most important thing right now.
Thank you. Ms. Camuel?
Yes. So it's funny because I have a little bit of a different take on people being encouraged or discouraged. When I've talked to voters at the door, we hit 16,109 doors last year in the special, and this year we're at almost 6,000 doors for the primary. But people are actually excited. When I talk to Democrats at the door, they're excited. They look at what I think could be termed as the 2024 legislative session won't be remembered for what we passed, but it's for what we stopped. And so they are encouraged, they are excited. We stopped some of those, like the Baby Olivia bill, we stopped the Love Them Both bill, we stopped the DEI bills. And being accessible has also been another thing that has been really helpful. And I have to say, like, I've had people reach out from other counties, my home county of Round County, when I've gone there to talk, they see me as their representative, echoing their voices and making sure that we are heard.
Thank you. We will now move to closing remarks. The candidates drew a second time for the order of closing remarks, and they will each have 60 seconds. They will go in this order: Sarah Ritter, then Adrielle Camuel. Ms. Ritter, you have the space.
Thank you. Once again, I appreciate the league hosting this forum tonight. And as you can see from the conversations that we've had, the voters of the 93rd District have a hugely important choice to make on May 21st. While Representative Camuel and I don't differ on a lot of issues, we have to leave it up to the voters to decide between a candidate with experiences in two branches of the state government and someone who is still learning the job. And so you can learn more about my positions on my website. It's at ritter4ky.com. And I humbly ask for your vote on May 21st.
Thank you. Ms. Camuel?
Hi, thanks. Again, thank you for having the forum, and I appreciate anybody who tunes in and watches. I will say that I believe that the folks in the 93rd made a really good choice last November, and it is up to the voters who will decide whether it'll be Miss Ritter or myself who wins on May 21st. But I do bring so much experience to the job, as well as a solid voting record representing the voice of the people in the 93rd. I have knocked thousands and thousands of doors in this district, and that's exactly how my policy positions were shaped at the doors by having these conversations. I will continue to work hard, continue to listen, and continue to be accessible to the folks that we represent. There's 45,000 people, and we're trying to represent their positions, what they think, what they believe in to make life better for them, as well as Kentuckians across the Commonwealth. And I believe that I'm the one who has the experience to do so.
Thank you. Thank you both. I so appreciate your engagement. I want to thank the candidates for participating today. And for you all watching us, if you're interested in league membership, please check our website at lwvlexington.com. Also, please be sure to make a plan to vote and look for additional information from the candidates on vote411.org. Early voting will be available to any registered voter on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, immediately before primary election day at the Lexington Public Library locations on May 16, 17, and 18. Election day will be Tuesday, May 21st. The polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Please remember to bring your driver's license or any other qualifying ID. Thank you for joining us and wish you a wonderful day.